Got a guest request already? All right, I'll take one more and then I'm gonna. Getting tired. I don't know how some of these people do lives for like hours. It's exhausting.
Hey, how's it going?
Logic Khalib.
No, LB.
Okay, how do I say it?
Logical LB.
Logical LB. How are you?
Yeah, good. How about you? I want to go
Good.
through a lot of the things you said. Um,
Okay.
you said Diaz is elected in Cuba.
Yeah.
He's appointed by the Communist Party. Do you know any agency that certified the election, like an
Do I
independent
know any
agency?
agency? I know how the democratic system works there. It's more transparent than the US electoral process.
Like, what are you basing that on?
What I base it on is how the electoral process works there, how you go and vote. You put in a piece of paper in a box. There are two children on each side of the box, making sure that the box is not tampered with. At the end of the day, the entire community goes back to the box. The votes are counted in front of everyone, and the numbers are
From who?
tallied.
Like,
And that
who
and
is
that
the
goes
who's
that
the
go,
independent?
who's the
What
independent?
independent? Like, is there an international agency? Anybody who can independently verify it?
Why do they require an international agency?
Because
Who
that's how you
says that
verify it. How else are you
is
gonna
the
know?
US?
If there's one party, the Communist Party in power,
Why do they
and they're the
deserve
one,
to be monitored in that way? Like some type
they
of
don't.
corrupt
Oh, they
organ
don't
like
deserve to be.
company.
But you're making the claim that it's valid election. You have to provide some kind of. If I say if I hold an election, my party wins,
Uh-huh.
and I'm the one counting the votes, and you're saying
Yeah.
if I say, then for other people to believe, I need some independent verification.
Yeah, but you know what? How about the US? The US has tampered
Why
in
why are you changing
elections
something? Yeah,
around. But
U.S.
hold on.
actually,
But
uh-huh,
the US doesn't have any independent party. The United States has rigged more elections around the world and even at home than anyone else. We don't have any
sure.
independent party.
Yeah,
So
you're going now.
the Cuban people, the Cuban government, who has done nothing but try to be the
Mhm.
opposite of the United States, is not worthy, does not deserve to be monitored like some
Okay.
criminal state.
Oh, it doesn't deserve to be, but if you're making a claim, you have to provide the evidence. And
No, the
Cuba
evidence is
appointed
the people.
what people? People who are trying to escape?
No, then it's not people trying to escape. It's the people that participate in the election.
No, that's you're saying it. You don't have any independent verification of what you're saying. But so Miguel Diaz is appointed by the Communist Party. So, but let's move on. What is it?
Well, that's not
And
true. Miguel Diaz-Canel is appointed by the people. He's voted for by the people.
you cannot verify that. You just keep
You
saying
don't
that.
seem very
Like
familiar with how the Cuban electoral system works, but
I'm
you seem
familiar
very
with
sure
actual
of but you seem very sure of how it works with very little information.
information.
And you
I need
think,
some
and you
kind of
think, and you think,
verification.
and you believe that a country that has been under heavy economic sanction
Uh-huh.
for 70 years now
Yeah,
should also
let's go
be
th
under
let's
international
go through that.
monitoring?
Let's go through that. What's wrong with the sanction?
What's wrong with the sanctions? It's
Hmm.
inhumane.
No,
It's
it
not.
says all. No, no. Actually, medicine and other things are allowed to go into Cuba, which is ironic. Why does Cuba, socialist country, need to trade with America, capitalist country?
Every country needs to trade, and they're not trying to trade
And
with
they do
America.
trade. So yeah, that's another wrong thing you said. After Russia collapsed, of course, that was the main trading partner. But Cuba currently trades with like Germany, China, many capitalist countries. So that's another wrong information. It's not a blockade. It's an embargo against American businesses, right?
No, it's
Cuba cannot
not.
trade.
It's an
Yes, it
embargo
is.
against any businesses.
No, it is not. Go
You
do some
keep on
basic
saying
research.
incorrect things because any ship, any
Okay.
company that
Everybody watching
trades,
this can go look up.
hold on, I'm speaking,
Sure.
hold on. So any company that docks in Cuba cannot trade for 6 months with anyone
Hmm.
else and is fined. And
No, they can.
they put 200 more sanctions on Cuba under the Trump administration.
No, they cannot trade with American businesses.
No, they cannot trade
That's the
with
sanction.
any
Go
businesses
look up
around the world.
go look up go look up trading partners of Cuba. They
Oh,
have plenty of them.
I know I'm very familiar, but unfortunately, it
Oh,
seems like you're kind
obviously
of
not.
No, it is
Obviously not.
obvious. It
I
is
have I have
obvious
actual
because
and China
you,
is the biggest
you're
trading partner.
what?
And China is the biggest trading partner. But before China became prominent, they had many. Even now, they trade with Germany, for example. I think that's the second biggest. So many capitalist countries routinely trade with Cuba. Though it's ironic that for socialism to work, it has to trade with capitalist countries.
Well, you live in a society, it's a global society. No one
Right.
has
But
all the
that then,
resources needed. Why is that
oh, of course,
ironic?
I agree with you.
Socialism has nothing to
It's
do with
ironic
trade.
because though I don't know you specifically, but ironically, the argument against capitalism made, like you were just saying about NAFTA,
Tell me.
you're saying you were just talking about NAFTA. You're saying it exploits Mexico, for example. Then you turn around
Sure.
and say it's a bad thing when Cuba doesn't get to trade with America. It's ironic.
No,
It's
that's not what
ironic
I
and
said.
contradictory. That is
No,
okay.
it's not
What did you say
ironic and
about NAFTA?
contradictory.
What did you say? Let's go. Okay, so
It forced an
let's.
agricultural society to industrialize and become
How do you
manufacturing.
enforce it? What do you mean? It's an independent country. They signed it,
The government signed it because the governments are
right?
controlled by the capitalist class. It
No,
had nothing to do
ironically,
with
again,
what
no.
the needs of the people.
Mexico actually elected. It's for once actually in the 90s. Yeah, had elected government, and on top of that, you can actually see a difference between in standard of living, North Mexico and South Mexico. Most of the factories are in northern Mexico. They have a much higher standard of living.
And it's still very poor. And it's still
Sure, it is.
completely
Yeah, of
turned their
course.
society
Of
upside
course it
down.
is. Of
And then
course
all
it
these
is because
agricultural workers went up north and then became criminalized
well,
for looking for work.
well, uh, let's talk about one thing in
Yeah,
common.
listen, these are the facts. And I'm
No,
sorry.
these
And
are
you're
the facts.
also,
You are
hold on, I'm speaking. So it's also
okay.
very unfortunate because the fact of the matter is that you're a bit uninformed about the Cuban embargo and the Cuban electoral process.
Okay.
Now, a country like the
Okay.
United States would be the type of country that would require international monitors with our electronic voting systems. A country like Cuba that has done nothing but try to improve the material conditions of their people and the people around the world should not have monitors. And that's pretty
Yeah,
insulting
trying.
to think
Okay.
that they should. So tell me, let me ask you this. You're a
hmm
defender of capitalism. What is your idea of freedom?
What is my idea of freedom?
Yeah.
What is private property and individuals are free to pursue their trade with each other, live their life as they please.
What would you call, what would you call your ideology?
I'm a consequentialist libertarian.
Oh, I had a feeling. Okay, so private property. Why is there so
hmm
many, why throughout the history of capitalism, there has been so much slavery? What is the
History
connection
of
between
capitalism.
slavery and, yeah,
Slavery has existed throughout human history.
no, but
Modern capitalism.
throughout capitalism, it intensified. What is it about capitalism
No, it
that
didn't.
works so well with having slavery?
You're asking a straw man question.
No, it's not.
Slavery?
This
No,
is
yes, it
true
is.
about the history of
No,
capitalism. It's
no,
not,
it isn't. I'll
it's
give you an
not,
actual
there's no
example.
such thing as a straw man question. It's a straw man
Yes, it is.
argument. No, there's no such
You
thing
can
as a
straw man
straw
a
man
you get
question.
yes, you can. You
Just
can
try to
put
answer
a
my
question mark.
question.
Look, I am trying to. Yeah.
There's no such
Let me
thing
answer
as a
it.
straw man
Mhm.
question.
No.
It's a straw man
Free
argument.
labor, capitalism, free labor is way superior than slave labor. This is
So
why,
you're
for
going to
example,
invent a term
let me
called the
finish.
straw man question.
Oh my God. Are you
So
gonna let
you
me
just
answer?
invent, well, I want you to try to answer the question specifically, why has there been so much slavery in the history of capitalism if it's free
No,
trade?
no. You're because something exists simultaneously as capitalism. Socialism exists with slavery too. I'm not trying to, on the other hand, go make the
You're not
claim.
answering the
Like if you look,
question.
because you're just conflating two things. It's
I'm
not
not
actual
conflating two
question.
things.
Yes, you
Throughout
are.
the
Let
majority
me.
of the time in capitalism, there has been slavery, a lot of slavery. Why?
Throughout the majority of history, communities have been communist and socialist, and
Don't
slavery has
deflect.
existed.
Don't deflect.
That's
Try
exactly
not
what
to
I'm.
deflect.
It's a
Answer the
straw man
question.
question. It is a straw man question. You are
There's no such thing
okay.
as a straw man
Explain.
question. It's a straw man argument,
I
not
just
straw
told
man
you.
question.
I just told you capitalism and my idea of freedom is people freely get to trade with each other, have private
But that
property, and
has
you are
not what has
saying
been the reality under capitalism.
that is the reality.
No, because throughout the
Yeah.
majority of the time, the 400 years of capitalism,
Uh huh.
350 of it has had slavery. So
Sure.
why has there been so much
Enforced by who?
slavery under capitalism?
Enforced by who? We can take examples like in America, Fugitive Slave Act, for example. That's enforced by the government. When people, slaves actually exist, your government, you're a socialist, you love government, I suppose. They go and enforce these that slaves have to be captured and brought back. Let me go through the details of actual economics of it. You look at North, which is industrialized, which had free labor mostly, and you look at South, it remained agrarian and backwards because free labor economically is superior to slave labor. And that's why capitalism will always prefer free labor because it is economic system that likes profits and efficiency.
So that's why, because capitalism is a system that prefers free labor, and labor has a diminishing value under capitalism. And the other thing about capitalism creates a hierarchical society. Capitalism creates a hierarchical society, a class-based society, where we can say this group of people are not people. Okay?
What?
So where on paper we say, oh, we have a freedom of individual exchange, but it's so easy to happen because it's happened throughout most of history under capitalism, that this group are not people, whether it's Native Americans or indigenous people in the global South or African slaves, those are not people. So don't worry, we still have capitalism. It's still individual trade, but don't worry, those are not people. And that's
at least have you should either have the knowledge or at least the intellectual honesty, not conflate things that government does. And government force invasion, colonialism.
And I'll tell you one more fun fact about capitalism. How did capitalism overthrow the monarchies? What industry, what gave capitalism so much wealth and power to overthrow monarchies?
Did a corporation go invade a monarchy?
Transatlantic slave trade. It was the capitalist class. It was a class of people.
Let's make. So you want to say capitalism, then you want to say feudalism is also capitalism. You can keep going with the strawman argument.
No. You call it a strawman argument now. I'm glad you call it a strawman argument because I was just asking a question.
Initially it was a strawman question. Now it's an argument. I don't know why you're stuck on all the semantics.
Because
anyways, let me for example, you said let me answer one thing. One of the many strawman things you said is like there's a class of people, there's a hierarchy. I can give you many examples of in our capitalist society, for example, 2 million workers work in co-ops, right? Because as I initially stated my position, capitalism is, and what I support is a system based on private property and freedom. People can come together and create a system they like. If workers want to work together, they can do that. If they want to take the risk, sure, go ahead.
And and under private property, slaves are property, right?
Under private, no.
Yeah. The slaves are the private property.
Yeah, because you can sell your labor, but slavery by definition is like
you're not selling your labor if you're a slave under a capitalist system, and you're not a human either.
What are you even saying? Oh, you had to consent.
Do you think Africans were considered human when they were enslaved?
No.
Do you think people in the global South and Africa and Latin America were considered human?
No.
These are problems with capitalism. Even I think you're South Asian. Do you know that the American and British imperialists didn't consider you to be human?
Sure. Yeah.
So this is the problem under capitalism.
What does this to do?
In the Bengal famine, over 1 million South Asians died. But it wasn't a big deal because they were not considered.
Who defended colonialism? If you do not know the difference between colonialism and capitalism, then I cannot help you.
Well, when we're talking about colonialism, let's bring it back to neocolonialism and imperialism.
No.
Which is a part of capitalism.
Let's first answer one thing at a time. You said that it's forced that it creates a class of people. You're forced to and dehumanize people. I just gave you an example. In capitalism, co-ops exist. Workers can come together and work. So why don't you answer that first? Then we can go into other straw man of
what is the question?
Capitalism. Question is your premise and the argument wasn't valid that capitalism creates dehumanizes people and forces them to be in a hierarchical system. How does co-op exist in capitalism then?
Oh, co-op can exist the same way I could The same way that I could
Then
bake
okay,
cakes and sell them to my neighbors
right,
under
okay.
capitalism.
So it can
But a
exist. So
co-op,
then you
it can, but
characterization. Then your
these types
characterization
of
is
business
wrong.
models, I don't know, you asked me a question. I'll give you a short answer. But a worker co-op can exist under capitalism, but that type of business model struggles a lot under the, by any means necessary, culture
Right.
under a capitalist
Uh-huh.
system. It's even harder to get business loans for a worker co-op. They have a harder, easier time in Europe because Europe has a different form of capitalism generally than the United States, which is much more ruthless.
Right. So it's not business. The loans they wouldn't get is because if it's not producing the efficiency and value that investors want. So you're saying co-ops are less efficient?
Investors.
Banks. If co-ops are better,
Well,
you would
under a co-op, the investors would be the workers.
you just told me that they cannot get the loans and stuff from banks.
It's harder. I did not say they cannot. I say that it's harder for
Okay, it's
co-ops to get
harder.
business loans, but there are co-ops here, and that's a great thing. In the US,
Uh-huh.
it's great to have co-ops, but in our present business climate, it's harder to start any type of business, whether it's a co-op or a
Right.
small business,
Why
because of
is
the
that?
presence of monopolies. Because we are under
That's
the
not why.
age of monopolies again. Monopolies, trusts, and
I
cartels
can
is
tell you.
really what runs our economic society.
Well, the best solution to cartels and monopolies, if they exist, is free trade. But let me tell you the biggest hurdle. It's called startup costs. It's a regulatory compliance cost, and
Hmm.
the more regulations and stuff you have, the harder it is for new business, small businesses to enter and compete.
Yeah,
And it
I agree.
concentrates. Yeah, okay, there you go. So we agree on something at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah. And what has happened in the past 40 years is as deregulation for big business has happened, they have created more regulation for small business, and it's been harder for small business to be created because business influences local, state, and federal government to create laws that benefit them. The irony of this is that when we deregulate, this is what libertarians and ANCAPs have always wanted. We deregulate, more free market, more free enterprise. And then what happens? Power gets consolidated, and then they create laws and use the state to only serve
It's
them. And then you guys go, that's not real capitalism, it's crony capitalism. There's a
It's
huge irony.
exactly it's no it's exactly the other way on both counts. Let me give you an actual example. There is something called Dodd-Frank. It was a banking regulation that came into
I
place.
know Dodd-Frank.
Okay, heavy banking regulation that came into place
It
under
wasn't really
Obama.
enforced.
It was enforced up until Trump, but let me give you the details.
Very little.
The not a lot. I can the one of the biggest people, one of the biggest uh, complaints came from actual credit unions. These are a type of co-ops. There and then when you look at the number of credit unions, they actually start diminishing after Dodd-Frank went into effect, right? So this is an example of more regulations killing exactly the type of things you like, the left
Mhm.
likes, ironically. That's the irony. And it made,
And
of
and
course, big,
and and who
it
influenced
made,
Dodd-Frank?
re- uh, yeah,
Dodd-Frank was influenced by the mega
that's the
banks, mega
point. Exactly.
corporations.
Exactly. We
Of
are
course,
the right is not the one asking for more regulation. Of course they're going to lobby. This is called rent seeking. This is called, regulatory capture. These are we study these things. Of
it's
course,
not about what
when you your
it's not
side is the
about
one
what's
asking for more regulations, and the
my
result you
side
get,
is
of
not
course.
asking for regulations. My side has no power right now.
So
And if you want
okay,
to call the
so you want
Democratic Party or
deregulation.
liberals my side, they're not my side.
Okay, so do you want deregulation then?
What I want is to
Hmm.
have a completely different mode of production and different economic system altogether.
But in
And
our system, do you
Dodd-Frank
want
and the Dodd-Frank regulation was a toothless, meaningless thing that half of it was enforced and then basically nothing at all.
if it was if
It
it
was
was
in its day, it was compared to the New Deal. It was nothing like the New Deal.
if well, I don't know if you want to go New Deal. I'm telling you the actual words of the Credit Union
Right,
Association.
right.
I think
And
they're the ones said
ultimately, this is what
Dodd-Frank has.
happens when power becomes so consolidated and these banks and monopolies
But who's
form, is they
uh
have so much power and influence over the government that
but who's the one?
it's
asking to give government more power, asking for more regulations. These are libertarians.
Libertarians are not asking for more government regulation.
Right, exactly.
Libertarians are asking for less regulation, and that's what we've gotten in the past 40 years. We've had
No, we haven't.
more
I just gave you an actual. I
no.
just gave you an actual. If you look at, there's a
The
simple.
Dodd-Frank is not more regulation. The Dodd-Frank is not the New Deal or any type of thing that was seeked to improve the
Dodd-Frank.
material conditions. The Dodd-Frank
Dodd-Frank
was
is not new
nothing.
regulation.
It
Okay,
was
but
by two corporate-owned political parties where even the creators of it received millions of dollars from banks and corporations to
that's what
create
I'm
a
telling you.
toothless, meaningless regulation. Okay? That got thrown out in we can compare it to the New Deal where they slowly chipped away at the New Deal after decades. A couple of years later, Dodd-Frank was like no more.
No, it took until Trump before he was made toothless, or until 2017 when the Republicans came into power. But that's the point I'm trying to tell you.
I
When you have more
understand.
regulations, yeah, it's called regulatory capture. You should look into it.
But
That's
it's not more regulations. Ultimately, what we've had in the last 40 years, after we've left Keynesian economics and entered into neoclassical economics, is deregulation in general, not more
okay. That
regulation.
is that is nowhere true. You look at there's a way to measure this
It is
called
true.
no, the Federal Register, and you can go look this up. There's a number of pages that go into it every year. It has been going up steadily every single year. It took a little bit of a dent under Trump. The growth started declining. But other than that, since the 50s and 60s, it has consistently gone up under every administration. And you can go look this up.
What has
We
gone
haven't
up?
had any. The number of pages in the Federal Register.
Okay, I don't think you're aware of what's really happened here, and especially starting with Ronald Reagan and the deregulation
He didn't do
that
any.
began under him, especially.
No,
He didn't do any
he
deregulation.
he boasted like he had a rhetoric of deregulation, but at the
No, no,
time,
no.
uh,
He physically
Tip
deregulated.
Tip O'Neill and Democrats controlled the Congress at that time. That's what people tend to, and
No,
it did
there was
not.
deregulation under Reagan. There was deregulation under
There were some.
Clinton.
There were
The
some.
repeal of
I'm talking about.
the deregulation of the Glass-Steagall Act. There has been
There,
steady
Glass-Steagall was partly
repealing of.
deregulated.
It was a huge
I'm talking about
deregulation.
overall. I'm talking about overall count.
Overall,
And,
these are particular laws that have
uh-huh.
been repealed.
Glass-Steagall is still in effect. It's only part of it was repealed, and that was
The
good. Uh,
Glass-Steagall didn't permit banks and investment institutions to become one, and it permitted them
right.
making them
Uh-huh.
become massive mega banks. So it was
hmm
repealed by the agreement of the
There
Democratic
are
and
two parts
Republican
to.
Party.
There are two parts to Glass-Steagall. Only that part you're
Okay,
mentioning was repealed. The other part is still
yeah,
in
so
effect.
it
But I'm
was.
talking about overall. I'm talking about overall regulation. That's why you count the number of pages in the Federal
Hmm.
Register. It has consistently
Hmm.
gone up under every administration.
And this is what would happen under any capitalist system, because any progress that is made under capitalism for the working class, for workers, for the poor, has to be continually fought for, because at the end it's just more scraps to the workers, because the
How,
people who
how,
ultimately have power are the capitalist class and the government that they have total control over. And that's why we had the New Deal, and the New Deal was written largely by socialists and anarchists, and it
mhm.
created a higher standard of living in the US. But what happened after World War II? We started the Red Scare. We started the repealing of many regulations of the New Deal, and we saw a slow but steady return to pre-New Deal conditions. And here we are now, age of monopolies once again, but these are retail and commodity-based monopolies, not manufacturing. People are working 2, 3 jobs at a time. This is a libertarian paradise. And of course, these mega corporations will seize control of the government and intertwine themselves with the government, because the state ultimately is a tool of violence and protection of power for the powerful.
in an actual capitalist economy, like if you had more free market and less government power,
This is
it
an
doesn't
actual
matter who.
capitalist economy.
It is a market economy. It has it's maybe 70. There's something called economic freedom index. You were saying Guatemala is capitalist for some reason. You can go look up economic freedom index, rank of countries.
Mhm.
Guatemala is it's very at the bottom. U.S. is decently capitalist, but nowhere close
Mhm.
to what us libertarians would like. If even if like
Sure.
let's say we had like a close to free market, right? It doesn't matter if me as a corporation or labor union, what have you, whatever special interest, I go lobby the government. It
Mhm.
almost um oh, my phone battery is getting higher, or the temperature is getting higher. It
Okay.
wouldn't
I'm gonna have to
matter,
go in a few
right?
minutes too, but you can finish your
Yeah,
thought.
let
Go
me
ahead.
finish up. So it wouldn't
Okay.
matter how, if I, if I capture the government, if I influence legislators, because government
Mhm.
has a little power. It cannot grant special favors to all this lobbying by corporations and other special interests. So that's the way you limit lobbying and everything that goes on. Because at the end of the day, politicians have self-interest, right? That's what you cannot elect somebody like even if you say like people like Bernie Sanders or whatever, they're so they don't have any special interest or they don't have any self-interest. They're gonna work for the good of the people. You cannot get government full of people who have no self-interest, right? So they will ultimately get influenced by whomever will win, whatever will win them the election. That's the route they're gonna go. So you want to reduce their power. That is empirically that has been the evidence, and I you can go read invite you to read public choice theory and economics. This is well studied issue. All right, so I'll leave it at that. Thanks for
Okay.
having me on.
All right. Thank you. All right. Nice
All
speaking
right,
with you.
bye.
So what we have ultimately, guys, is this idea that we want a free market, and there is no free market. The free market is a myth. The corporations and individual capitalists at the top will always manipulate the market to serve them. That's what's happened in the United States. It's what's happened in other countries. I did a TikTok a couple of weeks ago how Amazon will take private sellers that do well on Amazon. It will kick them off the Amazon platform. It'll take their product and start selling it through Amazon. And that is just the name of the game when you have a hierarchical system where the power not only are able to manipulate the market, but use the state to benefit them and only them, and then brainwash the people to support their own marginalization, oppression, and poverty. They will start thinking, "This is my freedom. I'm free in this. I'm free in this society where I rent my home. I have no car. I'm in debt, and I work three jobs. If you're lucky to find one, and that's freedom." And I personally define freedom in two ways. I don't know if you guys have heard this before, but freedom is the freedom to have your basic needs met. You can be free. You can think you're free in a desert. Go in the middle of the desert. You can say whatever you want. You can shout to the sky. You're free to die in the desert. You're free to do whatever you want. That's not freedom if you are in the middle of the desert. Um, Freedom is having your basic needs met, having shelter, having food, having clean air, clean water. That gives you freedom. And the other part of freedom is living in a society where you have say in how that society is run. Having a government, or under socialism, we don't want a state ultimately, but the beginning stages would be a state where we truly have a say in how that society is run. We don't have the illusion of democracy the way we have in the US. We have actual representative democracy where I can run for office, you can run for office. We have freedom to criticize the government, but that government serves us, serves the workers, serves the regular people. That is freedom. And that's not what we have in the US. Socialist countries, they're trying to do that, but they're under immense pressure. And I understand why some of these countries have some more limits to speech that we have here, because it's like these governments are afraid of espionage and spies and sabotage and state-sponsored terrorism against them. But guess what? They are victims of espionage and attacks and funding and training of death squads. They are having all those things happen to them. So then they limit certain types of speech. And I wish they didn't have that. I wish the US and the rest of the developed capitalist world would let them build their societies. Here we are. I think I'm going to get off. We're a representative democracy, which is inherently bureaucratic and corrupt. Yeah, I mean, we are a representative democracy, but at the end of the day, I don't want to get home from work and have a 5-hour meeting on how my garbage is going to be picked up if we're going to hire more cops. I want to elect people that will serve me and make those decisions for me. At the end of the day, what we want is leisure. We don't want to be bogged down in all these things. So at this point, I think some type of representative democracy would be better than some type of completely non-hierarchical system. Yeah, we live in communities and economies. That means relying on others. The copper prince, you got it. Anyway, guys, thank you if you followed. See you later, bro. Yeah, Greasy, you're the man. I love you. Always there to support me and be in the comments. If you guys like what I got to say, Crash, I see you again. It was nice speaking with you a couple weeks ago. I'll talk to you later. Bye.